Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and our favorite topic, tariffs. Going to talk a little bit of tariffs today too, because the world can't stop talking about tariffs. So we'll do a little bit more today. Loaded up for discussion today, we've got a Bitcoin holding. Well, things are moving fast. The headline was Bitcoin was holding 81K, then moved up quite a lot since I wrote it. Now we're moving down again. China actually announced retaliatory tariffs, so we'll touch on that briefly later today. We've got Ethereum postponing the Pectra upgrade until early May. Luckily, we've got Brad here to dive into everything going on in the Ethereum ecosystem, and we will have general discussion on tokens. Smokey from Bera Chain wrote an interesting article on tokens and some of the challenges that people are facing at the moment. So we'll get into that in a little bit, as well as a general discussion on market movements. As usual, I've got Brad in the co-host seat with me today. Cannot wait to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we do, say, or think on this show is financial advice. This market is exceptionally risky, and we don't know anything for sure. So please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Brad Guy, it is Friday. It is the 4th of April. How are you doing?
Yo. Man, yeah, things are great, man. It's Friday. We're having some bants on the Twitters with a bunch of projects and stuff. We're just having a good time. And when I say bants, I mean I feel like we haven't had like rage conversations in a while on like the technical side.
Why is that?
This is
I think everyone just puts up the white flag where it's like, look, guys, the market's down. Let's just leave it out. Let's stop fighting now.
Yeah. I mean, just like at least my observations from the technical side of the house, because like that's where most of my conversations skew, is one, like a lot of it's just like everyone's doing their own shit. Like there's a bunch of test nets now, like literally multiple test nets that people are talking about, which is kind of weird. And then it's just like, yeah, market's kind of down, macro's kind of taken over. People are posting about not crypto stuff entirely, right? We're doing AI. AI's come back to the forefront with 4.0 being released. So it's been a little slow, and finally we're having a little bit of drama on the technical side, and having fun with it.
That is good. So you're going to give us a little bit of a breakdown, not only on ETH, but also some of the technical stuff that is going on, because frankly, there's not as much. I mean, look, everything is getting overrun by the tariff conversation. And yes, we're going to talk about it. We have to talk about it. We'll get into it. But I think, AI. And AI potentially, but I think like it's helpful to keep talking about some of the more underlying things, which ultimately the space will continue to exist and continue to build, irrespective of what the president and his administration tweet, right? And I think that's one of the things that is always true. There's always stuff going on. It's just all the attention and has gone in that particular direction, but there's still stuff going on. So we want to keep drawing attention to the things that we think is interesting.
Yeah. And I can even say for myself, like sometimes I haven't had the energy to have the conversation recently. Because some of the on the technical stuff has been the same conversation, which is also really annoying. Like it's literally like seeing the value accrual thing for ETH. Like bros, we've been doing this for 12 months now. And it's literally like I'm citing my posts from August of last year. I'm like, guys, just go read this. Like I can't do it again.
The first when I wrote the snapshot this morning and I had the ETH thing, I had included the ETH headline. One of the first things that someone commented was, "Is this going to save ETH?" And I was just like, that's the same question. We've been asking that question. I was like, I don't know. Ask Brad Guy. Brad Guy's going to go into it later,
and we'll talk about it. Like it's a little fun. But before we're kind of diving into the show here, this is an important life update for me. So I want to make sure I say it. Like I'm going to the Redwoods this weekend. I like getting out and seeing some shit. I found out you didn't even know what the hell the Redwoods are. I know there's a lot of Americans in the audience, potentially like some East Coaster early risers. It like even if you're not from the West Coast, so the Redwoods for others who may be in your position, there's just giant goddamn dinosaur trees, like these huge fucking trees, right? You're so large you can drive a car through. That's the example I use for you. So I encourage you guys to Google them because they're really fucking big. But like for us as like kids, right? We always have these like sing-alongs and shit you have as like your
Okay.
nation's songs. And one
Okay.
of them included the like this land is your land or whatever for us. It's like
Okay.
from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. Like so like
Cool.
it's something that everyone knew in America, but not many get to see. And I finally get to see the things this weekend. So I'm excited.
That is very, very exciting. Not only that you're going to see it, but we're getting some
Hmm.
some vocals at the
Hmm.
same time. Can't say that that was expected, but
Multifaceted.
multifaceted. Good stuff. Well, we want some visuals from that. I'm sure. Look, I think this is the real
Do
visuals
they have
people
to
are going
be
to want to know.
Studio Ghibli?
You know what I'm going to ask. I don't think you do know what I'm going to ask. When you go, you're going to take some photos, but the real photos that people want to know.
Will
Are
I
you going to get
buns
naked?
out? Yeah, will I
Are you going
buns
to get
out?
naked
So
inside one of these humongous trees? And if
I'm
you want
not
to provide some
not
context as well, that might be a very strange question for a lot of people.
Yes. Fair. Yeah, so okay. I'm working on a bodysuit, right? So like as I was working on it, one of my goals was like, man, I always thought it'd be kind of cool to have the juxtaposition of like really pretty bodysuit with like a really pretty background. Because I lived in Norway at the time. I was like, I want that photo for my artist. I remember telling him that. So like I'm almost done working on my legs now. And as I've been traveling the last like year or two plus, Norway, I did it in Portugal, did some in East Asia. She's like, we'll pop out a tripod and we'll take a naked picture. I was like, you'll see me facing off into the sunset or the sun, and you'll see my pretty back piece alongside the pretty background. So if you search on my profile, you'll actually see some of those, whether you want to or not. We may take that. Yeah, depends on how busy it is.
I think
That's always
I
the hard part.
it's gonna be essential, right? That's what
Yeah, got to give
that's
the people what they want.
exactly. People want ETH saved and to see you in the
Bread
redwoods.
buns.
Yeah, there you go.
People studio like that ran a little bit. I had someone, Steve. I don't know if he's in the crowd. I can look at my phone, but
Yes,
someone
yeah.
he made the Studio Ghibli my bread character with my
Oh,
buns
yeah,
out,
that's so good.
and I saved that thing because I use it to like dunk on someone. That's gonna be and that's a staple now. So I can't thank him enough.
Love it. Okay, look, that is a good start to the show. We said, look, guys, okay, we want to talk about tariffs, we will get into it, but we also want to talk about other things. I like stretching that out for a little bit longer. But as usual, let's get to the headline. Well, start with the price action as usual. Before we get to the headlines, so everyone gets up to speed in the last 24 hours of what has been going on. We have Bitcoin's just been on a bit of a yo-yo at the moment. So now it appears to be down 1%. It's at 82K. It was as low as 81, went up to 84. Then this China news came out just a moment ago where they've slapped some reciprocal tariffs on the reciprocal tariffs. So we're down a little bit on that news, but we'll talk about that in a bit more in a bit. We've got ETH down 1% as well to 1.7K. XRP is flat at $2. BNB is down 1% to 586. Solana's down 1% to $114. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we have Doge flat at 16 cents. Pepe is down a couple of percent. Trump is actually up a couple of percent. Bonk is flat. Fartcoin is up 14%. Lord, seriously, just the most volatile asset in the
So
game.
many
If you
people
want
are
to
on
be
that one. I was removed from that wave, that saga, right? So like, but Farcoin is just it's embedded in the minds of so many people for like that. I just like come across through it, whether it's in my podcasts or just randomly on the timeline. But yeah, that one it's got a hook in a lot of people for some reason.
absolutely obsessed, like we talk about it every single day, it is the thing which moves most all the time. And so I guess if you want to be swing trading anything in this kind of market, that's probably the one. Although just on the 7 days down 12%. SPX up 6%. WIF is flat. Pengu's down another percent. Anything else of note here? We've got some AI 16Z down 13%. Peanuts up a couple of percent.
How's
Nothing
Mog
really.
doing? Mog, I don't have a bag, but like that's always been the one that's been pretty constant the last like I don't know, I'll say 2 years almost, year and a half.
Yeah, flat today,
Like
down a
yeah,
quarter in the last 7 days. I mean, a lot of this stuff is down around a quarter to 30% in the last 7 days. So even if
yeah.
there's like a bit of a green shoot here, it doesn't mean that it's like looking pretty if you've been holding it for longer than 7 days. So that is that. Let's get into the headlines themselves. Only really two today, which we'll dive into. as well as a bit of a discussion on the Smokey article on Bera chain. Got Bitcoin, well, bouncing off 81K after yesterday, the S&P losing 2.65 trillion. It was down almost 5%. Stocks like Apple were down 9%.
Did you see the Trump memes for the tariffs that come with all these photos? Oh,
The
dude.
penguin ones.
The penguin ones, and then like the one that's from Seinfeld, like what do you do, like what are you doing in here, Kramer? And he's like, oh man, it's just so good because it's all red, obviously. So like it's the throwback to the episode where he has the sunbathing room or whatever in his room. It's hilarious. But the penguin ones are by far the best.
I haven't seen the Seinfeld meme. I've seen the Seinfeld episode. But yeah, I saw the penguin memes yesterday. They were pretty jokes. But some of the
explain that to people, because like some people may have missed like some of the jokes on that. Give everyone a TLDR
on the penguins.
On the penguins, like why is that a meme? Because if I just said that to you, people would go, "What are you talking about? Why me? Why penguins?"
So there's an island, right? I can't remember the name of the island, but they got slapped.
McDonald and something.
McDonald and Hearth, was it? McDonald and Hearth Island, which got slapped with a tariff of, I can't remember what percentage, but the point was that there are 0 humans on the island and it's just a population of penguins. So really taking it out on everyone at the moment.
It's just so ridiculous. Yeah. And then just I think I saw the pictures of like just a bunch of penguins collected, like, oh, we got a pretty impressive rally here today to protest the tariffs imposed on our people. It's so ridiculous. I hate that there's funny stuff to pull out of this, by the way, because then it makes it all like kind of like less harmful. Like, yeah, that's fucking ridiculous. That's clearly ridiculous that you're taxing penguins. But like, it's funny, so we just kind of like keep going about our day. I don't know. Maybe it's a glass half full.
Just a quick one on that. Do you think it's better that it's funny because then we laugh about it, but then do we move on from it sooner when actually we should be like, no, hang on a sec, this is really, really stupid. And if it was less funny, then we would actually dwell on that a little bit longer rather than laugh about it. What's your like instinctive answer there?
My instinctive answer is like it reinforces in my brain how stupid like the broader thing is. So
yeah.
My position is strengthened in that way, and it actually almost makes me even disregard the rest of it. Where it's just like I don't care what you said and how fair the rest of it is. You tax penguins, and like maybe that's just like an observation of the power of like memes or like just how narratives of this stuff can spin up. But yeah,
interesting. Okay, well, penguins were worse off yesterday, but also a lot of shareholders were too. In the S&P, Apple was down 9%, just picking a couple here. Google was down 4%, Meta was down 9%, Nvidia was down 7%. This is like really big move in the magnificent 7. But also just across the board, to be honest. So the stock market was moving a lot, and a lot of people were talking yesterday about the relative strength of Bitcoin compared to the move that was taking place elsewhere. But we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that in a second. The second headline is that Ethereum's postponed its Pectra upgrade until early May. Very curious to hear Brett's breakdown and update on what is going on in the Ethereum ecosystem there. I know there's some additional drama going on maybe some of the L2s, which I'm curious to learn about. In terms of NFT or other notable price action, we spoke about Fartcoin. There's also some other coins that are going crazy. Housecoin was up 100% to 8 million. And Titcoin was up 60% to 37 million. So these are the kind of things that people are trading. There's a little bit of energy back in the meme coin ecosystem, perhaps. Certainly not for the older ones, but maybe some new ones are catching a bid. People wanting to speculate. In terms of the NFTs, a bunch of X-copies. X-copies are moving. X-copy Bangers and Crash 17.9 ETH. X-copy Empire Things, his latest edition, sold for 13. I'm getting routine bids. I've got this like full set of X-copies. One of his older sets, one of his more affordable sets. Every day I'm getting bids coming in through that old OpenSea email. Remember when we were trading NFTs in 2021 and you'd get the email from OpenSea and you'd feel good because it meant that someone actually wanted your NFTs, and then they just disappeared. Those emails disappeared from your life for a couple of years. But I'm getting those almost every day with these X-copy editions. So that's something to note. Getting into the rest of the news to keep you up to speed with everything else, US recession odds rose above 50% on Polymarket for the first time. So that's people betting on a recession incoming in 2025. You've got Securitize announcing the BlackRock Digital Liquidity Fund distributed an estimated $4.17 million in dividends, which is the largest payment ever for a tokenized treasury. That's pretty interesting. On Avalanche, Water, a blockchain infrastructure purpose-built for the commodities market, announced its migration to Avalanche. So that's kind of interesting. And then a couple more bits to close things off. Bitcoin staking protocol Babylon announced the Baby token. So I think a lot of people are highly anticipating that, although we don't know when it's going to launch. I know a lot of people are delaying their plans. But that one at least has been announced. What was that, Brad?
I don't like that ticker. I don't think that's a good. Maybe are you supposed to pronounce it Babby? Maybe.
I'm not going to, if that's what you're asking.
Right. That's the conflict. Yeah, because like now they're Baby. I like it conceptually. I don't like the execution of it and how it actually plays out in practice.
You shouldn't have to do like a phonetic guide for your ticker, right?
Yes, correct.
No phonetic guides.
It's right now. It's second only to PYUSD.
You mean piesed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hate it. That's it's PayPal USD for anyone who is like, it's a bad ticker.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. We've got PH Unky wanting to come in on this. Funky, welcome to the stage. What's your take on these tickers?
I love the PH Unky. It is Baby. I hate to break it to you, Brett, but we work with the team, and that's how they're all pronouncing it, Baby. So it's Baby.
Fair, but I'm not liking it because like there's no connection to the actual product. Like my brain doesn't go Babylon whenever I hear Baby.
The icon is a baby dragon. So, and I forget, it has a name, but the little like mascot, if you will, is a baby dragon. Hence Baby.
I would have went Bab. Like, I can't do Bab either because no, BAB would work. Yeah, I would have stopped at Bab because I don't like to come here with problems without solutions. I don't just complain. So my solution is we just cut the Y out entirely, make it Bab, because then that sticks with Babylon. Go forward.
Okay.
2% cut.
Okay, that was the ticker and the ticker analysis segment. We'll do that more, and we'll do that with people's names as well. I see we've got ST Ats up on stage with us as well. I think that there's more material here that we can do. Brad, there's something to do with yours as well, but I'll think about that more. Okay, so did I finish the roundup? Yes, that was the rest of the roundup. So not a huge amount, I think, beyond the main stuff. Before we get into the main stuff, just got a few minutes. I wanted to dive into this article that Smokey wrote, the founder of Bera Chain. I thought it would be interesting to dive into as a kind of point of discussion. He wrote an article called, I just want to share this on the screen for the people who are watching in, if I can find it. I can't find it, so I'm just going to take it from here and I'm going to put it here. This is what happens when Legendary is not on the show. We're going to get there eventually, but okay. It's on the screen for people who are watching. It's called A Token Won't Save You. In essence, he wrote this article asking everyone to actually step back and ask why they're launching tokens and really questioning even if they should. And the interesting part of it, I guess, is specifically questioning if the number of launches within even his own Bera ecosystem itself was going to result in a number of teams, quote, shooting themselves in the foot around traction and adoption. He made a few interesting points, which I was going to share and be curious for your thoughts, Brad, especially as you're kind of building out Mega ETH, although you're not really at the same stage. Curious to hear like how you're thinking about this with a long-term view. He said a token launch should be used to turbocharge something that's already demonstrating PMF at its greatest inflection point. It should return value to the users of the platform who helped to get to that point of PMF. Also said and reminded people maybe that the community is not the marginal buyer. It's truly worth asking yourself, who is the marginal buyer of my token? You spoke a little bit about how, look, your community is already invested. You need to have other people who are going to come in and purchase that if that's the route you want to take. He also said that, talked about the importance of focusing on the product. He said you can build a product that is default alive, profitable, and at some point perhaps even has the potential for buybacks, which directly provide value for token holders. And the reason why you need to do that is because there's all kinds of other stuff you can't control. You cannot control the market. You can't control the other stuff. The only thing that you can really control is the product. And trying to generate net new demand, I think, was the point or the direction he was going in with that conversation. That's like the very quick TLDR, my reading of it. Brad, be curious to hear your thoughts before we get into the bigger tariff conversation later, before we talk ETH upgrades. What are your thoughts?
I think he has a little bit of a cart and horse problem, because like he's talking about, you can't do like you shouldn't issue a token because or until you have PMF, but he's an L1. L1 needs a token. So like that kind of is a shitty position to be in. That's totally opposite of what he's like referring to there. And the clear example that I think about that like would fit this is like Pump Fun, right? Pump Fun is something that has no token, clearly has PMF. It's generated $600+ million in the last year or so, right? If it were to come out with a token now, it would be something to supercharge its ecosystem, which is continually growing, right? They have Pump Swap now. So I think I agree with him broadly. Also, like it's not a revelation, right? Like, yeah, sure. Like you don't want your community to be the marginal buyer because, yeah, your community probably doesn't have a lot of bags to even like move a token that is in the asset tiers that we're used to seeing in this industry, right? You can't like, yeah, it's just it's not conducive for a number go up. And frankly, there's a lot of extractive people also in the community. So it's just a fact there. So I think it's a great observation, but not really something you can put into practice 100% of the time. I think, yes, you should be able to push forward your product before or as best you can before a token, because for reasons you stated, like most things don't need a token, and they have a token and then try to retrofit it into what's actually going on, or like how you can add value to it. And if you're in that position, you're unlikely to find use cases, right? You make decisions that don't make sense, that aren't really conducive to the actual token price appreciating. It's just not a good look.
Interesting. Do you think there's like some kind of I don't know how you'd plot this on a graph, but it's like if you haven't found product market fit yet, you should not launch a token. Then the further you go along the graph, the more successful you are, the more optionality you have to launch one. Maybe that's better. But then there's some additional point, maybe down the end, where Pump Fun is, where it's like you're making so much money, you've established product market fit so well, then the token becomes detrimental because you're already making all the money. I think like and this actually speaks to this in the article. He says like one of the reasons you should be launching a token is not to self-enrich yourself, which I guess even for teams that think that they've found product market fit, the token actually creates a meaningful uplift in their kind of net worth because of the way that they're designed. It's low float, high FTV. The team percentage, the team allocation is very, very high. But if you actually got making so much revenue anyway, you can probably achieve all of that without doing it. And so you kind of come out the other side, and then you kind of go back to the thing where actually, in a weird way, not establishing product market fit and establishing extreme product market fit, you kind of come to the same conclusion, which is don't worry about the token.
The decision should always, in a perfect scenario, the decision would come from the conversation where how can we implement this feature? And the best way to implement something that you want that will like meaningfully impact your product comes via the token vehicle. And what I mean by that, right? It's like you were trying to build stuff out as a team. You think, oh, this idea would be cool. It would enhance our product. We don't have a mechanism for doing the thing. A token would enable that mechanism. So like if it becomes a natural evolution of your product in a natural way, and it's just something that cannot be achieved in other means, then I think you've reached the nirvana of token implementation, where it's not just like, okay, we have a token, what do we do with it? And then you're like, well, we have this thing over here, let's just like peel off some of the fees and shoot it over here, right? Like that's not sexy, doesn't enhance anything. It just kind of does some of this token magic where you like start routing numbers all over the place and you start moving them around the black box, and then all of a sudden you expect your thing to be worthwhile. That's not the case. It leads to negative sentiment because you're going to have a downline price action because you don't create any actual demand for the thing. So I think that is my position, and it seems to be largely with his. It's just it should come from the natural evolution of your product as a need to implement something, as opposed to as a need to make your pockets bigger.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I also think, though, it's a function of where we are in the cycle now. Kind of narrative follows price. Everything is more down, and it becomes much easier to write this, I guess, probably like common sense article. Whereas I think when things are much higher and everyone's riding high and all tokens are catching bids, you know, people don't worry about it too much. But
And being blunt with it, like, you know, you're not always in the best position to like be able to make these decisions. And sometimes straight up, like, money is the vehicle that you need. Like we need to hire staff. We're not generating enough revenue right now. If we issue a token, it will then give us the ability to raise some funds, which can then allow us to enhance the actual product. So like some people are in that position, which is very similar to what Bera Chain was in, right? Bera Chain sold a shit ton of their pre-created token to investors so that they could build Bera Chain, right? So like it was a token before there was a token before there was a chain, and they were then in the position of having to retrofit, and it's a little easier with them because of the structural like need of their chain, right? And like some of the floor planning they could do for that, but they were in that position. They needed to raise a shit ton of money. They did it through distributing token before the token or the chain was live, and then after the fact are now going to be in a position of trying to make this token have extra utility, use case, whatever.
Yeah, interesting stuff. It's a bit of a conundrum I think these teams find themselves in, but I think that's probably enough. Just wanted to bring that to people's attention. It was a notable article to get into, trying to bring those things to people's attention. Since we're talking chains, though, let's hold off on the tariff stuff just a little longer. We are going to get to that. That is the biggest headline of the day, and the retaliatory. How do we even pronounce this? The retaliatory reciprocal tariffs. We'll get to those. We will get to those. They are important. But sticking with chains, then, Brad, ETH announced, or I think it might have been the foundation itself, announced that there was some delays with Pectra, the latest upgrade. I think it'd be interesting for you to share, like, what's going on there. What is the upgrade seeking to achieve? Why is it delayed? What's the kind of status in your view for Ethereum and any of the other bickering that you've maybe noticed going on in that specific ecosystem?
Okay, so the headline: Ethereum postpones Pectra upgrade until early May. Setting this table, we'll say Ethereum, obviously the largest smart contract platform in our ecosystem. Pectra, which is actually a combination of two words, Prog and Electra, that's required because it's actually two upgrades in one. One's for the consensus client, one's for the execution client, some nerdy stuff. And the actual upgrade itself is scheduled for May 7th. So it's roughly 30 days from now-ish. That upgrade is going to combine 11 distinct changes to both of those clients. The most notable one for users is 7702. That is the one that allows you guys as E0A holders, which means just like the account that you hold your smart the account that you have right today. You have a private key that links up to an account. This account is a dumb account. You guys have to do everything from it. This will allow you to basically interact with smart contract wallets, make your stuff more complex. You can do batch transactions. You can get rid of which would get rid of the approval flow, right? Something very exciting for everyone. The other thing that is important is on the staking side, it actually allows people to increase the maximum from 32 ETH to 2048 ETH. So these large entities that have a shit ton of ETH now can consolidate that into singular validators instead of having to have 1,000 validators for their 10,000 ETH, right? And that will will lower network overhead, could potentially make it more performant if it needs. Anyways, so it was previously delayed based on two previous upgrades that actually had failed in testnets. Whenever they implemented it, the testnets locked up. They didn't finalize, and that is because not because of the upgrade, but because of some weird testnet parameters that just were improperly configured. They eventually set up a third instance of testnet called Hootie. It worked flawlessly once I identified those other two configuration issues. And then because of that, it's coming live in 30 days from now, which was the original plan. But TLDR, like someone asked, is this saving Ethereum? No, it will not save Ethereum. And that is just because Ethereum is the Titanic. You're not going to like all of a sudden flip a switch and then everything is saved, right? We had the merge. That was a moment like this. We had another upgrade of like actually about this time last year, did not save Ethereum, right? It's going to take at this point, one, some meaningful changes on the performance side, in my opinion. And then two, it will like, so that means scaling the L1, bringing users back to the L1, bringing apps back to the L1, making it useful again directly with ETH. And then two, like it just takes time to implement this shit and change the psychology and the culture of Ethereum, which is just not something that is going to happen in a fast time. Like we said at the start of the show, we've been having these conversations for a year, and people are still kind of fuzzy on where they stand. So like it will continue to be that way as the culture shifts and the researchers and the KOLs begin to update their opinions and educate themselves on what actually needs to be done, because no one has an answer. But my thing is, no, it will not save anything. It's nice though.
Two follow-up questions before we get into the Tariff stuff. One, is that in conflict with the L2 roadmaps that many people are going after or seeking to achieve,
this upgrade, or like my thoughts?
Yeah, your thought on needing to upgrade the L1.
No, it's not actually in direct conflict. That was actually a post that I made recently. It's like everyone thinks that like, oh, if you make Ethereum better, you're not dedicating resources to Base and Arbitrum will be mega ETH, and therefore they will not be as good. I'm here to tell you guys that those people are restarted, and it actually, if you improve the L1, it actually does improve the L2s. And like the key example for this, especially for chains like the Optimism stack, the Orbits, whatever, is those chains are meant to interoperate, right? They're horizontally scaling. They can handle higher capacity because there are more of those chains, right? They want it to go wide as opposed to high. And the way that they do that, the way that they interoperate is basically by going down to Ethereum and then going back up to the next chain, right? So like I need to be able to prove to Ethereum my thing is deposited before it could be accepted onto the next chain. And the speed at which that can take place, that transfer, this horizontal scaling nature of that stuff, the speed at which that can take place is improved by Ethereum being faster and more performant, right? So if Ethereum accepts a transaction and does it faster than the 12-second block times, or if they can finalize it faster than the 13-minute finality window, if they can do that stuff faster, like if they do it within 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, it means now Base and Optimism can transfer funds in 20 seconds instead of 13 minutes, right? So then the user experience is improved. These two chains can interoperate better, and security all around is improved. So it is not in direct conflict for improving everyone if you improve the L1.
Interesting. Okay. Appreciate the takes. I think it's helpful to get into some of the technical stuff as well. You know, we're going to be talking tariffs. I don't know
Can we
for how
talk
long.
base drama first?
Yeah, give us the quick TLDR there, and then we'll hit the tariff stuff. Okay.
So this is just a total aside. I'm giving it as a guilty pleasure. So Base, there's infected.fun, I think is what they were called. Did a post yesterday of like, we're leaving Base, we're going to Solana. It's not fast enough. It's not scalable enough. We broke the chain. Their claim was we broke the chain. And then everyone was dunking on them because they clearly did not break the chain. It just got kind of expensive. And there were some reverted transactions, which I dug it up with a couple of guys from Blockworks and a few other data boys from Dune. And it was just like, there were some bots on the chain that were spamming stuff. Infected whatever. These people were, the game was just that they created a shit ton of coins, each one after a different virus, like measles, mumps, whatever, all this shit. And then they were trying to get it to spread throughout the chain, throughout wallets, throughout whatever. And they had some bots set up that people could use to actually send this shit around. So just kind of spam the chain a little bit. It's token games, whatever. But anyways, their claims on their post were just like really, they had some bold claims that were just not true in any way. And then, so the first thing was, we broke the chain. They didn't break the chain. Literally didn't break the chain. It's just like gas prices went up a little bit. And then Jesse, founder of Base, posted a screenshot from the internal chat where like the infected team thanked the Base employees, said like, hey guys, sorry we had a bug on the front end of our product. We take full responsibility for this. It was our fault. Like, we're a lot of learnings. You guys were great for connecting us with a lot of people. And then, so he did that. And he's like, guys, you admitted to us it was your problem. And then he's like, yeah, well, we went back and reevaluated. And now we've determined that Solana could have handled it and Base actually broke. And then coming back on top of that, everyone's like looking at the chain. They're like, bro, like blocks never stopped. It like the increase in gas was because you did it on a Monday and the day before was a weekend, right? So like, yeah, gas was down on the weekend and then it was up on Monday. And then the piece de la resistance, or no, the cherry on top, fuck, I forget what it's actually called, but the creme de la creme, there you go, was that someone in the replies is like, yeah, guys, I'm a validator for base and it was down. Like, I can't believe what was going on. And then the team replied to it. They're like, yeah, exactly. This, like, everyone look, see. But the problem is base doesn't have public validators. It's a fucking single sequencer. There's a made up role that this person was like saying that's like an obviously not true thing if you understand any of this stuff. And the team was like cheering them on because it was just that it helped their case, even though it was a lie. So just a lot of tech drama.
Yeah, people need to really stop doing that. People need to really stop being so publicly deceitful when so obviously wrong. I don't think that's helping anyone's cause. Appreciate that little update there, Brad, on the ETH ecosystem. But let's look, we got to get into it now. Held off long enough. The tariff stuff has been pervasive. It's yesterday we obviously had the big news about the tariffs. S&P plunged nearly 5% yesterday, wiping out roughly $2.65 trillion in market value. I think it was the single worst drop since the 2020 pandemic crash. Just to recap quickly, Trump's sweeping new tariffs on virtually all US imports. They range between 10% to 50%, depending on the country. And there's all kinds of, it was not received well by the rest of the world, I don't think. In comparison, I think the response that people felt towards Bitcoin was that it responded like relatively well. So Bitcoin held steady around 81K. It was down yesterday, but not by a huge amount. Then this morning, like in more recent updates, went up to like 84. I think people started to think it was bottoming out. And then just before we started the show today, we had the news, although I don't have much more news beyond this. We had the news that China announced retaliatory tariffs. It's going to get pretty, there's a lot of alliteration going on here. Retaliatory tariffs on all goods. And Bitcoin dropped from, I don't know, around 84K to 83. So that's where we are. That's where we are at the moment. Brad, curious for your general thoughts at the moment. I think we're kind of becoming, one of my kind of reflections before we get into the market stuff is that we're kind of becoming a show, and this is relevant to the market because we used to talk about product and teams and sentiment. Now it's just like who's saying what, when are they saying it, and very, very focused on the president, the administration, and this very geopolitical conversation that's happening all the time now. So what are your reflections?
I'm happy to announce I was literally just talking about a team, some drama, some products and stuff. So like, I'm still in fighting shape right now, talking about all that stuff. Yeah, man, it's like, I know I've established my position on a lot of this macro stuff in the past, where I am bullish directly on our industry. I am not a macro analyst. There are far too many things for me to consider or even understand. Like I'm in a I don't know what I don't know position with a lot of it. So I have to just kind of ingest what's going on and try to somewhat position myself best based on how I'm ingesting that stuff or how I'm interpreting that stuff, because I don't know who to even trust, right? And the president of the United States is taxing penguins. So like, what the fuck do I know? Man, like I'm bullish direction on our industry. I have a lot of mental bandwidth that I can devote to something that interests me, which is our industry. I am not in a position where I need to understand where the dollar is going to go within the next 6 months so that I can survive that same 6 months. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, controlling what I can control in here. I can't, I don't have the mental bandwidth to keep my life happy, enjoy the work that I do, contribute to this ecosystem, and also try to become a macro analyst and predict the future. So it's going to do what it's going to do. I want to best position myself with an industry that I understand.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of coming to that conclusion where it's just like, look, we don't know how it's going to go. We're just not in control, and therefore trying to focus on the things that they are able to control. Just a couple of additional pieces of context. Then Funky, going to come to you with your hand raised, and then we've got Stats with us as well. I'd be curious just for some further reflections. I know we spoke about it a little bit yesterday too. So I think this new tariff from China it was a 34% tariff on US goods imposed from April the 10th. And the tariff imposed by the US on China was also a 34% tariff. And there was already a 20% tariff on China. So that was 34% on top of that, meaning it was a 54% tariff on China by the US. That was confirmed in a video that I can see with CNN by Besant yesterday. So it's getting hard to track all this stuff because people are saying different things on different days. But so just to know, it's like fairly reciprocal in that sense. But Funky, I want to come to you here. What are your thoughts? How are you monitoring these situations, and what are your thoughts on the market?
Well, I mean, I think you guys, I just want to start off with some kudos to Brett. I love the just his admission that these things are outside of circle of competence, right? And I think that's the truth for most of us, because we're not macroeconomic economists and so on and so forth. I also wanted to say the two things you guys noted, because we had a great conversation. Shout out to Steve and Cap. They had a whole awesome opener yesterday on this issue with the tariffs. And just what Brett said at the end, and then you noted it too, be like, these things are all outside your locus of control, right? At the end of the day, I'm very much a stoic. These are things that do not put any kind of mental time or energy into worrying about these things. Just let them play out, right? Like you can't do anything about it. Just focus on your family, focus on what you can do at your home, focus on, if you really want to look at your portfolio, but that's not going to do any good. Don't worry about it. And I think the tariffs are going to, there was a list that Cap put out yesterday on his show where it was just showing all the other countries that were quickly falling in line. And like, oh, no tariffs announced. We're not going to retaliate, except for France, whatever. They were like retaliation locked in, which I thought was hilarious. And China, I got to imagine the trade imbalance is so big. We're the ones just, probably buying tons and tons and tons of Chinese goods. I can't imagine that the people of China are buying nearly as much. Like, there's no way that that's at parity, right? They probably buy some luxury goods like iPhones and so on and so forth, but there's no way that their tariffs are going to have the same kind of impact on our companies the way that theirs will on ours, because we're the consumers of Chinese goods. But again, at the end of the day, I think so much of this is just going to be much ado about nothing in the end, because there's going to be a breaking point. There's going to be a point at which this stuff is going to get rolled back. I think this is all just saber rattling, as we would call it, for geopolitics on the part of Trump. But to your point, he is a wild card. We don't know how long it's going to last. But I would say just focus on what you guys were saying, locus of control. Don't worry about things that you cannot do anything about, and just ride the wave.
2 points on that. Thanks for that, Funky. I saw an interview with Besant yesterday, and they're kind of asking him, I can't remember the exact question they asked him, but to your point about who comes off worse, it was his opinion that if you study economic history, it is the country which is running the surplus which comes off worse. And I think that's the point you're trying to make, which is, people really need access to the American market. And that was his position anyway. So I thought I'd say that. And then I guess the second thing about the wildcard thing, I think maybe this is why it's the wildcard, right? Everyone keeps assuming that it's going to get rolled back, that they're going to stop at some point, that there will be this point where they decide to either negotiate or change their mind or go take a little easier because the damage to the stock market has happened. And I guess if you're looking purely on the evidence at the moment, I think they're still happy to plow forward in that respect. So I think I understand why people still think that Trump values the market, doesn't want the market to go down, but up until now, he's not folding yet. Is my observation. Would be curious to hear Stats' thoughts. Sam, welcome to the stage again with us. What are your thoughts here, man?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with most everything that's been said. I think the idea of like no one should care about tariffs. Like, there's this kind of like line like, oh, everyone on crypto Twitter is now a tariff expert. I mean, look, Nasdaq's on 10% in 2 days. Like this is the biggest down move that risk assets have had in a decade outside of the 1 week in COVID. So, if you care about your investing, you have to care about this stuff and just try to kind of form some sort of view. And I think being dismissive of people trying to actually wrap their head around this, I think, is not the right approach. But that said, like, I mean, I don't quite understand this idea that the U.S. just put massive tariffs that kind of every single analysis says was like done by some very basic formula that doesn't make a whole lot of sense the way it was done. And then Eric Trump tweets, everyone should just fall in line and do what we say. It's like, you're talking about Xi Jinping here. Like, what did you guys expect? Like, you think he doesn't have midterms? He's an autocrat. As Trump says constantly, he rules with an iron fist. You think he's just going to like bend over? I mean, of course there's going to be posturing. Of course there's going to be fighting. I tend to agree with Funky that, you're probably going to get some sort of reconciliation here, but where it's in, I say it's in neither's interest, but it does feel more and more like Trump cares less and less about the stock market. But I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion, but the numbers people are talking about here are really destructive for the status quo that we're used to, and I think it might be more pain than people are okay with. So we'll see.
Appreciate the take. I hadn't thought necessarily. I think it's interesting to put into the mix that point about the G, where he doesn't necessarily have a ticking clock, right? I think when people are thinking about Trump and this timeline that they might be on, the midterms, for example, is just something where they think, well, okay, maybe he's got to fix it by then, right? He's got to have one eye on that. Whereas I guess other people, if they don't have that ticking clock, then they might be more free to be a bit more difficult for longer. So appreciate that. Adding to the conversation, Joe, welcome to the stage. Good to have you with us. I think you've been listening for a while. Don't know if we've had you up before, but good to have you with us. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, it's been a minute since, it's like 4 a.m. over here, right?
Yeah, I knew you were out there on the West Coast, but you always make it.
Yeah. Hey, so okay, the the tariffs are super complicated, but the thing that most people, and this is almost everybody, like if you don't work in capital markets or you don't actually ever try to raise money, and I'm talking like real money, not what we do here in Web3. If you don't try to raise capital, like do VC route, most people never actually learn how the financial system actually functions. And like the thing to understand is that we basically have three sides to the U.S. economy, which means that there's basically three sides to the global economy. And you have the traditional side, and that's where the Fed sits, right? The Fed sits on top of that part of the pyramid, and they push the money down into traditional banking, and that's where we go for our home loan, our car loan, our school loan. Then you have on the other side of that, you have debt, and debt is where basically the family office sits on top. So you're talking the Waltons with $280 billion that they manage. You're talking Bill Gates. You have somewhere close to $10 trillion that sits on the family office side. Some of this money goes back to the late 1800s, where the first U.S. oligarchs started, right? The Weyerhausens, Carnegies, Rockefellers. So that money pushes through as debt, because what you're doing is you're pushing it into VC firms. You're pushing that money down into startups, into pre-IPO companies. And that money cycles back through. And what they're looking for is they're looking for something close to like an 8x return, because most of that money gets washed and burnt up, right? But the capital flows back up. So that's your debt side. On the other side, you have dark money. And dark money is everything that's paper. That is basically all $100 bills. And you may not interact with a US $100 bill, but your account does. Your TradeFi account does. Your crypto account does, because whoever's onboarding money through Coinbase or Kraken or whatever is usually going to onboard that either through their credit card or cash, right? And that money is heavily dependent on this dark system that China is at the top of right now. And how that works really is that if I spend $100 bill overseas, at some point that money has to come back to the US. Most $100 bills are not in the US. Most $100 bills are overseas. Now, China has heavy controls on their economy because they're not, an autocracy. Unlike in the US, where if I move $10,000 between accounts, the bank's going to file a form on me. In China, you can move as much money as you want between your accounts if you're a Chinese millionaire, a Chinese billionaire. But the second you try to move a yuan out of China, the central party gets a report. So you have to use alternative means to buy all your houses. I'm in Southern California. My wife's Cantonese. I kind of know how the system works from a lot of different reasons, but the money that comes into the US from China comes in through non-traditional banking. Only 10% of all the money that comes into the US from China comes in through traditional banking. The rest of that money, and we're talking $900 billion, comes in through what's called shadow banking or mirror banking. And literally that is tea shops. And you can walk in and you can hand over $130,000 so you can get your kid in Palo Alto or Brooklyn $100,000 so they can go pay for college. And you're gonna walk into a tea shop, you're gonna walk into one of the small firms, and you're gonna hand them that 100,000 plus the 30% rake, and your kid's gonna get a number and an address, and they're gonna show up on the US side and they're gonna get that money in US dollars. And this is how the world works. And the reason that the Chinese can do this, and this doesn't happen at the government side, this happens at the triad, like 14K side, is because they're buying those dollars from the Mexican cartel here in the US. And they're using those dollars to sell back to Chinese businessmen. And that is how the world works. And everybody knows it who deals with money. So what these tariffs are doing is they're going to create a cash crunch. And nobody wants to say that because they don't know how to fix it. So it's just another angle to think about.
I mean, very fascinating stuff. You say everyone knows how it works. I was definitely not one of the people.
Well, I mean, everybody who deals with big money, right? Like I didn't know this until I had to go and raise, $150 million. And I had to go and learn. I had to go and learn that I had to take a trip to Bentonville, because if you want to raise any kind of money, you need to meet the Waltons. And the only way you can meet them is to go to Bentonville. So like once you dip your toe into raising capital, you have to go and learn how the capital system works, unless you fall ass backwards out of Stanford and one of your friends just goes and, you go the Kevin Rose route, right? Where you just like trip over, fall into money, and somebody gives you money and then you just fail. And there's those guys. But like if you need to raise money for like weird stuff, that's not the thing that Silicon Valley's trying to do. You got to go learn where money works. And that's how money works. That's how money works in the world. And it's not that different in the UK. You guys have a lot of pounds that get spent outside. It's not that different with euros. That money has to cycle back through. And that's where the cycling happens. And I'm not, a proponent of fentanyl or something. It used to be cocaine and meth. But this is how the world works at the tier where cash happens. And there's no other way to get cash back. Yep.
Interesting. Fascinating stuff. Can I ask one follow-up question, Joe? I appreciate we're kind of running out of time today. Trying to link this. So a lot of that stuff is new to me. Appreciate you sharing that perspective. But the follow-up question is like linking it to the tariffs then, and what are your thoughts based on the information that you just shared? What are your thoughts on the effects of
what happens, or why are they doing it?
Yeah, like no, the effects of it. So if we were to go down this route, what are the kind of
Well,
knock-on effects to that
well, it's
kind of
going
whole
to be
process
less.
that you just described?
Prices are going to go up and they're not going to come back down. Prices never come back down. So even if all this is posturing, which really it's the monetary form of parking our battle crew. And capital already starts to shrink. Now, there's this harebrained idea that they're going to be able to push interest rates back down to zero. Perhaps they do that. Perhaps they do another stimulus. But the thing to understand about these things is that anytime that people think that it's the government that makes them poor, and it's not the government that makes them poor. And by poor, I'm not talking about poor people. I'm talking about if you're not in the top 4,000 people in the world with capital, you're poor. And that's because the money at the top is so heavy that you can't imagine. I mean, I'm dealing with a pack of billionaires right now who, that thing I shared with you in the DM, a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I built that to facilitate the flow of capital throughout the world and resurface dark money. Okay. For all the good stuff I can do with the blockchain and art and the preservation of art. Art is one of the number one ways to move capital between any point in the world and choose your regulatory location. Okay. So if you add tariffs to something like this, businesses instantly react by raising prices. Okay. They don't lower prices. They may take a couple cents off. And I'm not talking about commodities and I'm not talking about food. I'm talking about anything else. And all the wrappers and all the boxing and everything that goes around something, that's going to go up in price. And they're not going to lower them. And if they lower them, they're going to lower them under pressure. And I don't think either government gives a shit about putting that pressure in place. And so what the posturing that's happening right now is it's every time you hear Mexico or Canada, that's a substitute for the word China. And what's happening right now is it's not about any other country. It's about this financial back and forth between us and China. And the thing that's really funny is that we're never going to get into a shooting war with China. And China doesn't want to get into a shooting war with us. And they're not going to take Taiwan through force. They're going to take Taiwan through political, malfeasance, fuckery. And that's going to take about 10 years. And what's going to happen is that they're trying to line themselves up for what happens next on their continent when Putin passes, because everybody knows he has a medical situation, and that may play out in 5 years or 15 years. But Xi looks at the map, and what he sees is he's the biggest player, and Russia has a huge chunk of Asia, and he doesn't like that. And so whatever they say behind the scenes, we're friends, we're friends, we're friends. You keep your friends close, you keep your enemies closer. And he's lining himself up for making a kingdom over there, which consumes the part of Russia that is currently Asia. But it's easier to make sure that the people are pissed off at the Americans on the other side of the water, just like it's easier for us to be pissed off at the Russians or the Chinese. And this is what this is all about. We want to cause them economic harm because it helps Russia. And there's this weird, whatever you want to believe between Trump and Putin thing. And so we're trying to hammer them to weaken them because Putin understands the map and he understands that he's super weak right now and that nobody in the globe fears Russia anymore outside of their nuclear arsenal. And that's what's happening. So we're just going to have to pay more for stuff. And when there's going to be a cash crunch. And just remember, if there's a stimulus or something to try to fix this in 2 years or whatever, you're not going to get to keep that money because you're going to pay your rent, your credit card, your mortgage, and all that money is backed by hyper wealth. So it doesn't go to the bank. The bank is the middleman. It goes to the guy who's lending the money. And that's the hyper wealth. I'm done talking.
Fascinating stuff. I did ask for a take. We definitely got one there. Joe, I appreciate you for sharing your thoughts. Obviously went into, I guess, a slightly different direction than people might have expected. A very in-depth set of thoughts encompassing all kinds of stuff. Something to mull over the weekend. Guys, we've run out of time for today. But Joe, I appreciate that take. Brad, just as a closing thought, as we move into the weekend, final reflections. Probably didn't think we were going to go in that direction.
My birthday's tomorrow. Enjoy the weekends, everyone. I will. Find a Redwoods of your own.
Find a Redwoods of your own. Okay, guys, that was the show for today. I hope that was interesting. Trying to keep up to speed with all this stuff going on. The situation is changing fast, moving all the time. We're doing our best to keep up with it and get you the core information that you need, as well as some proper takes on how things might play out moving forward. We do this every day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour live on X Video, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. To have a wonderful day, have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you again on Monday. Take care and bye-bye.